My name is Margaret Johnson. I'm 67 years old. People are surprised when they hear my age. They say my skin is good, that I look young, but I know. I know what each wrinkle carved into my face in the mirror means. It wasn't age but traces of pain. I got married at 37 and lived for 30 years. I took over the small diner my mother-in-law ran and worked from 4 in the morning until 10 at night. I worked until my hands cracked and my back bent. My husband Richard did nothing except serve customers in the dining room. When business was good, he said it was thanks to him, and when it wasn't, he said it was my fault. But I endured. The restaurant gradually grew and we opened another branch. I developed the menu and managed the staff. Richard just played at being the boss. That's how 30 years passed. My son Daniel grew up and got married, and I thought I could finally rest a bit. But it was last spring. Richard started acting strange. He smiled while looking at his phone and went out late at night frequently. At first I thought it was because of business. But one day when I smelled unfamiliar women's perfume in Richard's car, I knew intuitively. This wasn't right. I confided in my friend Linda. Linda said let's hire someone to investigate. A few days later Linda showed me some photos. Richard entering a hotel with a young woman. That woman was Jessica Miller, an instructor at the yoga studio I attended. 47 years old, 20 years younger than me. My heart collapsed. I couldn't believe someone I'd lived with for 30 years could do this. That night when Richard came home, I confronted him. Richard denied it at first but finally admitted it. And then he said this. It's over between you and me. Let's divorce. His voice was cold and firm. It felt like 30 years were crumbling in an instant. What was more shocking was my son Daniel's reaction. Daniel called me and said, "Mom, Dad has a life too. Please understand, even my son abandoned me." That night I cried alone. Tears I'd held back for 30 years poured out all at once. But even while crying, I thought, I can't collapse like this. I still had one card left. From 30 years ago, I'd been saving money little by little each month. Without Richard knowing, without anyone knowing, I created a secret account. Little by little from household expenses. Little by little from restaurant profits. At first it was to prepare for any emergency. Because I was afraid of being kicked out when I got old. Worried about what would happen if I got sick. That money had now become $2.8 million. Richard would never dream of it. I decided that night, I would live my own life now. Chapter 1 Image prompts main. A 67-year-old Caucasian woman standing alone in a small, traditional American diner kitchen late at night. Her face showing a mix of exhaustion and quiet determination. Wrinkles telling stories of hardship. Wearing a simple apron, dim fluorescent lighting, photorealistic, melancholic atmosphere. The next morning, Richard went to work at the restaurant as usual. I followed him. I started working as if nothing had happened. The staff didn't notice, but I knew. All of this would soon end. After lunch service, Richard said to me, "I retained a lawyer. Just sign the divorce papers next week." I answered quietly, "What about property division?" Richard said with a sneer, "The restaurant is in my name. What I'll give you is about $50,000 in alimony. That's enough. $50,000. That's all 30 years of dedication was worth." I said nothing. Richard seemed to think I would obediently comply. Smart choice. If you go to court, you'll only suffer. The restaurant is mine because I built it, so legally it's mine too. I nodded. Richard left with a satisfied expression. Probably to meet Jessica. I stood there thinking. We lived together for 30 years but he could abandon me this easily. That evening I met Linda. Linda squeezed my hand tightly. "Margaret, you absolutely can't just let this go. I'll introduce you to a lawyer." The lawyer Linda introduced was a woman. Attorney Jennifer Lee, who appeared to be in her early 50s. Attorney Lee listened to my story and said firmly, "Even if the restaurant is in your husband's name, if you actually operated it, you can claim property division. We just need to secure evidence." Evidence. I had evidence. Ledgers I'd written for 30 years, recipe notebooks, text records with staff, photos. Everything proved I was the actual operator of the restaurant. Richard was just a figurehead. Hide the secret account too. In property division litigation, that can be recognized as your sole property. Attorney Lee's words relieved me. The money I'd secretly saved could be protected. From that day I began preparing in earnest. First I took out old ledgers. I'd written them myself from 30 years ago. Menu development records, ingredient purchase details, staff management logs, all written down without exception. Richard wouldn't even know these existed. I also contacted staff. Head chef Tom and floor manager Sarah, who'd worked there a long time, readily agreed to testify. They knew well how devoted I'd been. Without you, this restaurant would have failed long ago. Chef Tom's words gave me great strength. I wasn't alone. Richard seemed relieved that I was being quiet. He started meeting Jessica openly. He even brought her to the restaurant. Watching Richard introduce Jessica and laugh in front of the staff, I felt more disappointment than anger. Is this really the man I loved? Can 30 years crumble this easily? But there was no time to grieve. I collected more evidence. I printed out restaurant account transaction records. All deposits and withdrawals were linked to my credit card. I also found tax returns. The business registration was in Richard's name, but the actual taxpayer was me. A week later Richard came with divorce papers. Just sign here and it's done. I'll give you the $50,000 in alimony next month. I took the papers and read them slowly. There was no property division clause. Richard intended to take the restaurant alone. I won't sign. At my words, Richard frowned. What? I'm filing for property division. I built that restaurant. See you in court. Richard's face hardened. He hadn't expected me to come out like this. The wife who'd been obedient for 30 years had suddenly changed. Are you crazy? The restaurant is in my name. I'm the actual operator. I have all the evidence. I spoke calmly. Richard left with a flustered expression. I watched his retreating figure thinking. This is just the beginning. I filed for property division. Attorney Lee was competent. She perfectly organized my 30 years of dedication into legal language. The plaintiff was the actual operator of the restaurant. Menu development, ingredient purchasing, staff management, accounting, she handled everything. The husband merely lent his name. After filing, I got a call from Richard. His voice was full of anger. What are you doing right now? This is embarrassing. What's embarrassing is you abandoning a wife who devoted 30 years to go to a younger woman. I answered calmly. Richard cursed and hung up. After that, Richard avoided me. But one problem arose. My son Daniel came. Daniel confronted me with an angry face. Mom, why are you doing this? Dad is suffering so much. Your dad is suffering? What about me? Mom, you're old now too. Can't you just quietly wrap this up? Daniel's words tore my heart. My own son treating me like this. I looked straight at Daniel. I worked for 30 years. I paid your tuition with money I earned. I paid for your wedding with my money. And now because I'm old, I should quietly take it and live? Daniel was speechless. I didn't want to talk anymore. I sent Daniel away and sat alone. Is this what family amounts to? Linda comforted me. Daniel is still young. He'll understand later. What good does understanding later do? I'm already hurt. I smiled bitterly. But I couldn't give up. I had to claim my rights. Attorney Lee carefully organized the evidence. 30 years of ledgers, photos, staff statements, tax records. Everything was submitted to court. The opposing lawyer seemed flustered. They didn't expect this much evidence. The odds of winning are high. Attorney Lee's words relieved me. But I couldn't let my guard down. Richard would also retain a lawyer to counter. A few days later came a settlement proposal from Richard's lawyer. We'll give you 30% of the restaurant shares. 30%. Nowhere near enough. Attorney Lee firmly refused. We need at least 50%. If not, we'll go to trial. Negotiations broke down. A trial date was set. 3 weeks later, I collected more materials in between. While organizing old photos, I found one from 30 years ago. Taken in front of the small diner my mother-in-law ran. I was 37 then and Richard was 39. We both looked young and happy. Did I love him then? Thinking back, it was more duty than love. The sense of responsibility that I had to feed my in-laws, that I had to maintain the household. That's what kept me going for 30 years. But now it's different. I have the right to live my own life too. Just because I'm old doesn't mean I should give up. While preparing for trial, I kept watching Richard and Jessica's activities. According to Linda's investigation, the two frequently went to expensive restaurants. I also heard rumors Richard bought Jessica designer bags. It was essentially my money. Restaurant profits went into Richard's pocket, and with that money he satisfied Jessica. I was angry but endured. Winning in court was the best revenge. Every night I sat alone thinking, what if I lose the trial? What if I get kicked out with only $50,000? I was anxious, but I had my secret account. In the worst case, $2.8 million was mine. I imagined what I'd do with that money. Open a small cafe? Or live quietly in the countryside? Travel? Just thinking about it excited me. The first time I'd felt this emotion in 30 years. The night before trial, I couldn't sleep. Tomorrow everything would be decided. I looked out the window and vowed, win or lose, I would live my own life now. On trial day, I woke up early. I looked in the mirror and dressed neatly. Gray jacket with white blouse and black skirt. Attorney Lee said impression matters when going to court. Linda was waiting in front of the courthouse. Linda squeezed my hand tightly. It'll go well, you can do this. When I entered the courtroom, I saw Richard. Jessica sat next to him. Jessica wore flashy clothes. She looked at me with what seemed like a mocking expression. I ignored them and sat in my seat. The trial began. Attorney Lee argued first. Plaintiff Margaret Johnson was the actual operator of the restaurant for 30 years. I'll submit evidence. Ledgers, photos, staff statements were submitted in order. The judge examined them carefully. Richard's lawyer objected. The business registration is in the defendant's name. Legally, the defendant is the restaurant owner. But the plaintiff did the actual operation. Under civil law, contribution to property formation must be recognized. Attorney Lee responded calmly. I watched nervously. Witness examination began. Chef Tom took the witness stand. Mrs. Johnson did everything. Menu development, ingredient purchasing, staff management. Mr. Johnson only showed his face occasionally. Chef Tom's testimony was clear. Richard looked uncomfortable. Next was floor manager Sarah. The restaurant can't run without Mrs. Johnson. Mr. Johnson is even clumsy at dealing with customers. As witness testimonies piled up, the atmosphere changed. The judge's expression became serious too. Richard's side couldn't object further. During recess, Richard approached. It's not too late. Let's settle. Settle what? I'm going through with the trial. I spoke firmly. Richard returned with an angry expression. Jessica grabbed Richard's arm and whispered something. Probably cursing me. Afternoon proceedings resumed. This time I took the witness stand. I was nervous but answered calmly. For 30 years I woke up at 4 in the morning to shop. I made the soup stock myself and pickled vegetables. I managed employee salaries and filed taxes, all of it. My voice didn't tremble. The judge asked, what did the defendant do? He greeted customers and handled payment. I did all the actual operation. Richard's lawyer cross-examined. But the business registration is in your husband's name, isn't it? He just lent his name. My mother-in-law put it in my husband's name. But I'm the one who built it. I answered with a confident voice. The trial continued for over 2 hours. Finally, Attorney Lee gave closing arguments. 30 years of dedication cannot be converted to numbers. But the law must realize justice. I ask that you recognize at least 50% shares for the plaintiff. The judge nodded. The verdict would be in 2 weeks. After the trial ended and I left the courtroom, my legs gave out. Linda supported me. You did well. You were great. Can I win? Of course. Look how hard you prepared. Linda's words gave me some relief. But I was still anxious. 2 weeks felt too long. I returned home and sat alone. Richard had already packed and left. The house we'd lived in together for 30 years was empty. It was lonely but also liberating. That night Daniel called. Mom, how was the trial? Verdict in 2 weeks. Do you think you'll win? There was worry mixed in Daniel's voice. For the first time he seemed to be taking my side. I don't know. I did my best. Mom, I'm sorry. I was so ignorant. Daniel apologized. Tears came to my eyes. I didn't realize what a comfort it was to have my son understand me. It's okay. Mom can live well alone now. After hanging up, I took out my secret account. $2.8 million. With this money I could make a new start. Even if I lost the trial, I thought I'd be okay. But I wanted to win. I wanted my 30 years of dedication recognized. Not simply because of money. I wanted to prove I was a valuable person. As the 2 weeks passed, I planned for the future. I decided to open a small cafe. A cozy cafe in a quiet neighborhood. I'd brew coffee myself and bake cakes. I wanted to chat with customers and live leisurely. Linda also thought it was a good idea. I'll come visit often. Give me free coffee. Of course, you get free coffee forever. We laughed. It felt like the first time in a while. Whatever the trial result, I was already starting a new life. The sentencing day approached. That morning my eyes opened unusually early. Sunlight came through the window. It seemed like a good omen. When I arrived at the courthouse, many people were already there. I saw Richard and Jessica too. Richard looked haggard. Jessica still wore flashy clothes, but her expression looked anxious. I entered the courtroom. The judge entered and sentencing began. My heart was beating too fast. The judge looked at the documents and opened her mouth. The plaintiff Margaret Johnson's property division claim is partially granted. 60% of the restaurant shares under the defendant's name shall be attributed to the plaintiff. 60%, more than I'd expected. The court had recognized my dedication. Tears came, but I held them back. The judge continued. The plaintiff was the actual operator of the restaurant for 30 years, handling overall management. The defendant was merely a nominal business owner with low actual contribution. Therefore, the plaintiff's contribution to property formation is recognized as 60%. The judge's voice reading the verdict was clear. Richard hung his head. Jessica looked at Richard and whispered something. Probably angry. Additionally, the defendant shall pay the plaintiff $50,000 in alimony. I even got alimony. A total of 60% of restaurant shares plus $50,000 in alimony. Victory. A perfect victory. As I left the courtroom, my legs gave out. Linda hugged me tightly. You won. You did it. Only then did I burst into tears. All the emotions I'd held back for 30 years poured out at once. Joy, relief, liberation. Everything mixed together. You worked hard. Attorney Lee offered a handshake. I thanked her. Without Attorney Lee, it would have been impossible. When I came outside, Richard was standing there. Jessica was nowhere to be seen. She must have left first in anger. Richard approached. Margaret, I'm sorry. Apologizing now. I looked straight at Richard. Sorry is all? 30 years means what? I was wrong. Let's reconsider. Richard said pleadingly. But I'd already made up my mind. It's over now. Let's settle the restaurant and live separately. I turned and walked away. Richard shouted something behind me, but I didn't listen. I had no relationship with that man anymore. I went to the restaurant with Linda. The staff all applauded. They'd already heard news of my victory. Congratulations, Mrs. Johnson. Chef Tom smiled brightly. Floor manager Sarah's eyes welled with tears. I was grateful to them. Without their testimony, I couldn't have won. Thank you all. Dinner's on me tonight. That night I had a modest dinner party with the staff. I laughed comfortably for the first time in a while. I didn't think about Richard. Rather, I felt relieved. I returned home and took out my secret account. $2.8 million. Adding the restaurant shares would be quite a large amount. Now I could really make a new start. The next day Richard called. What will you do with the restaurant? I'll take my share in money. Or sell it and divide it. Okay. Richard's voice sounded exhausted. I wasn't interested in him anymore. I decided to think only of my future. A few days later I started restaurant sale procedures through a realtor. The restaurant sold faster than expected. Good location and many regulars. $4 million came to me as my share. Combined with the $2.8 million in my secret account, that was $6.8 million total. Adding the $50,000 in alimony made $6.85 million. I never thought I'd have this money in my hands at 67. Daniel came to visit. Daniel held my hand and said, Mom, you're really amazing. I respect you. You just realized? I smiled. Daniel bowed his head. Mom, I'll do better from now on. It's okay. You live your life. Mom will live Mom's life. Daniel looked surprised. He probably thought I'd depend on him. But I decided not to lean on anyone anymore. That night I drank with Linda. What will you do now? Open a cafe. A small cafe in our neighborhood. Good idea. I'll help too. Linda was genuinely happy. I was excited too. Because a new life was starting. After settling the restaurant, I began preparing the cafe in earnest. I found a good spot near my house. A small shop on a quiet residential corner. Good sunlight and nice atmosphere. I signed with the realtor and started interior work. Not flashy, but cozy and warm. Wooden tables and comfortable chairs, pictures I liked on the walls. Linda came every day to help. A display case would be good here. How about putting plants there? We shared opinions and filled the space. It was fun after a long time. Creating something new was exciting. I named the cafe Margaret's Retreat. Simple but warm feeling. I designed the sign myself. Warm handwritten style font. A month later the cafe was complete. It came out prettier than I thought. I bought a good coffee machine and an oven for baking cakes. After 30 years working at a restaurant, I was confident in making food. On opening day, Linda and Daniel sent congratulatory flower wreaths. Neighborhood people also stopped by curiously. Quite a few customers came from the first day. The coffee is delicious. You make the cakes yourself? They're really good. I felt proud at customers' compliments. The sense of achievement I'd felt in a long time. During 30 years working at the restaurant I wasn't appreciated, but here it was different. About a week later, I saw a familiar face. It was Richard. Richard came in looking haggard. "Margaret, let's talk for a minute." I had customers, so I quietly led Richard to a corner seat. I served coffee and asked, "What is it? Can you lend me some money?" I was surprised. Richard had come to borrow money. "What for?" "Jessica. That woman abandoned me. She spent all my money and left." Richard's voice was shaking. Jessica had just used Richard and left. I'd expected this. "So, I have some debt now. I spent too much on Jessica. I can't even pay credit card bills." Richard was pitiful. I never thought the man who once looked down on me would look this shabby. But I felt no sympathy. "Sorry, but no. Please, Margaret, I'm really in trouble. Just like you did to me. I won't help you. Deal with it yourself." I spoke firmly. Richard sat there dazed for a moment, then got up. His back looked lonely, but I didn't turn around. After that incident, the cafe prospered even more. Word of mouth spread and customers increased. Especially neighborhood seniors came often. "Owner, the atmosphere here is really nice. The coffee is good and the cakes are delicious too." I felt proud every time I heard compliments. I was now not someone's wife or daughter-in-law, but a cafe owner. A life lived in my own name. One day Daniel came with his wife. "Mom, the cafe is really nice." "Thanks. Sit down. I'll give you coffee." My daughter-in-law also admired the cafe. "Mother-in-law, you're really wonderful. I want to live like this later too." The young daughter-in-law's words were refreshing. I smiled and served cake. Daniel held my hand. "Mom, I respect you. Really, it's okay. Mom is happy now." I was sincere. Starting a new life at 67 wasn't late at all. Rather, this was the happiest period of my life. At night while cleaning the cafe alone, I thought, I hadn't wasted 30 years. That time made me strong and made me cherish the current happiness more. The moon was bright outside the window. I smiled and turned off the lights. Tomorrow seemed like it would be a good day too. 6 months had passed since I opened the cafe. Now I had regular customers and daily sales were stable. Most of all, I was happy. When I woke up in the morning, I was excited to go to the cafe, and when I came home in the evening, I felt proud. Linda came almost every day. Now she even helped like an employee. "A customer is here. 1 coffee please." When Linda greeted customers, I brewed coffee. We were in perfect sync. Working together was more fun. One afternoon, a middle-aged man came in. He looked familiar. Looking closely, it was Richard's friend Stephen. Stephen looked at me with an awkward expression. Owner. "Welcome. Please sit." I greeted him politely. Stephen ordered coffee and carefully brought up the subject. "Richard has been having a really hard time lately." "I know, but there's nothing I can do. I know he was wrong. But he's so pitiful." I smiled bitterly at Stephen's words. Pitiful. When Richard abandoned me, he didn't think I was pitiful. My life is precious too. I'm going to live my life now. Stephen said no more. He drank his coffee and quietly left. I soon forgot about it. But a week later Richard came again. This time in even more shabby condition. His clothes were worn and his face was gaunt. Margaret, please help me. I said no. I spoke coldly. But Richard didn't give up. I have nowhere to go now. I lost my place too. Please. Richard showed tears. The man who once looked down on me was crying. But my heart didn't move. Think about what you did to me. You ignored 30 years and chose a young woman. Coming now asking for help. Does that make sense? I'm sorry. Really sorry. Sorry doesn't fix everything. It's too late now. Leave. I turned away. Richard stood there for a while then finally left. Linda patted my shoulder. You did well. Don't waver. I know. I absolutely won't waver. I vowed. If I helped Richard, I'd be a fool. He had to pay for the path he chose. After that Richard didn't appear. I heard news through Stephen. Richard was living in a boarding house now. Barely making ends meet with day labor. I also heard rumors Jessica had already met another man. Even hearing that news, I felt nothing. Richard was now a person unrelated to my life. Rather I focused more on the cafe work. I also developed new menu items. Cakes made with seasonal fruits, homemade cookies, sandwiches. Customer reactions were good. Owner, won't you share this cake recipe? It's a secret, I answered with a smile. The cafe gradually became famous. It was posted on social media and bloggers came too. One day a young female customer asked, Owner, how old are you? You look really young. 67. Wow, really? I can't believe it. What's your secret? Living happily. I answered sincerely. Because I really was happy. Age was just a number. What mattered was how you lived. Daniel also stopped by often. Now my relationship with my son improved too. Mom, I bragged to my friends. That my mom is a cafe owner. Haha, thank you. I really respect you. Starting something new at this age. I felt proud at Daniel's words. The saying that the best time to start is when you think it's too late was right. In the evening I sat in the cafe with Linda and drank tea. Growing old like this isn't bad either. Right, we're just starting. We laughed. At 67, life was still long. Lots to do and lots to see. Looking at the night sky, I thought, if I hadn't met Richard, there wouldn't be the me of now either. Pain made me grow, and separation made a new beginning possible. Everything was meaningful. A year had passed. The cafe had now become a neighborhood landmark. Many young people came, and seniors also came to rest comfortably. Every morning I woke up early and headed to the cafe. It was a completely different feeling from working at the restaurant for 30 years. Now I wasn't working because someone made me, but because I wanted to. That was the biggest difference. Chatting with customers, thinking about new menu items, decorating the cafe prettily. Everything was enjoyable. Linda had now become an official employee. I decided to pay her a salary too. No, we're friends. What salary? Because we're friends, I should pay you properly. Linda finally accepted. Working together was more fun. Sometimes when there were no customers, we drank coffee and chatted. Margaret, shall we take a trip? A trip? Where? Hawaii. I hear winter Hawaii is nice. At Linda's suggestion, my eyes sparkled. A trip. I'd never taken a proper one in 30 years. Richard and I never even had a honeymoon. Good, let's go. From that day we planned the trip. We decided to close the cafe for about a week. When I notified regular customers in advance, everyone understood. The owner needs to rest too. Have a good trip. Hawaii was beautiful. We walked looking at the ocean, ate delicious food, and visited pretty cafes. Linda and I giggled and laughed. Taking trips like this is nice too. Right, let's do it often. Sitting on the beach watching the waves, I thought. I never knew I'd enjoy this kind of freedom at 67. If I'd stayed with Richard, I'd still be tied to restaurant work. Divorce wasn't misfortune but opportunity. After returning from the trip, I reopened the cafe. Customers welcomed me. Owner, did you have a good trip? How was Hawaii? The time chatting and brewing coffee was happy. This had become my daily life. Ordinary but precious days. Then one afternoon, an unfamiliar middle-aged man came in. He wore a suit and looked neat. Are you owner Margaret Johnson? Yes, but who are you? I'm from a franchise company. I'm interested in your cafe. A franchise. I was surprised. The man handed me a business card and explained. Your cafe has good word of mouth. We're wondering if you'd like to expand as a franchise. It was a tempting offer. But I shook my head. Thank you, but I'll decline. This one small cafe is enough for me. Still, please think about it. We'll give you good terms. The man left his card and went. Linda asked, really won't do it? You could make a lot of money. There's something more important than money. My happiness. I was certain, if I expanded the cafe, I'd be busy again. Managing employees, managing branches, doing what I'd done for 30 years again. I didn't want that life anymore. Small but mine. That's more precious. Linda nodded. We returned to our daily routine. Brewing coffee, greeting customers, drinking tea together in the evening, ordinary daily life. That was the best. Daniel came with my grandson. A cute 3-year-old boy. Grandma, oh my, our grandson. Want some cake? My grandson jumped with joy. Daniel said, Mom, I learned from you. That life isn't an ending but continues. Right, you can start anew anytime. I smiled while giving my grandson cake. When this child grows up, will he remember this story? That his grandmother started a new life at 67? Evening came and I closed the cafe. While cleaning up with Linda, I said, Linda, thank you. For what? For being by my side. Without you, I couldn't have done it. What are you talking about? You would have done well alone too. We laughed, but I know how much strength Linda gave me. So this is what friendship is. On the way home alone at night, stars twinkled. I looked up at the sky thinking, 30 years of pain, the hurt of divorce, a new beginning. Everything was part of my life. I had no regrets. Rather, I was grateful. All those things made me who I am now. A strong, independent, and happy person. 67 years old. Some people might think it's the end of life. But for me it was a new beginning. I still had much to do. I wanted to travel more, learn new hobbies, and spend more time with my grandchildren. Age is just a number. What matters is how you live. Now I was living properly. Not in someone's shadow but in my own name. As Margaret, I arrived home and looked in the mirror. A wrinkled face but smiling brightly. I liked this face. A face containing both pain and happiness. The face of my life. Tomorrow would be a good day too. I'd open the cafe doors, greet customers, chat with Linda, and quietly read a book in the evening. Ordinary but the life I chose. That was most precious. Now I know, life can restart anytime. When you think it's too late is the fastest time. And happiness isn't far away. It was right inside me. Moonlight came through the window. I lay down with a smile. With a peaceful heart, looking forward to tomorrow, loving my life.